Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Transfer Daily stream. I'm joined by David Lynch today to get stuck into the transfer rumours that have been coming out over the night. We've seen that Youri Tielemans has been linked to the Reds for 16 million, and Paredes from PSG, who's been a name that's been getting floated about for quite a few years now. He's always seemed to be popping up all over Europe, and then we had a little stint at Roma. What do you think of Paredes, Lynchy? Do you think he could potentially be a player that could fit into a Jurgen Klopp midfield?
I think one of the things is that when his name pops up, is you think that the first thing that sort of probably pops out about him is the fact that he's 28 years old. So with Liverpool and the way they are with transfers, and particularly the fact that this idea that they definitely 100% need a midfielder has sort of really come strong after a difficult start in the league. That shouts at me a bit short-term fix, and that's probably not what Liverpool have done over the years, and not really what they would want to do now. Because I think if the hand is forced and they do go into the market to eventually sign a central midfielder, I don't think they want to lumber themselves with someone who they don't think either has some resale value or some potential to develop a little bit further. And then you look at some of the other clubs that Paredes is being linked with, for example, Juventus. Makes a little bit more sense as someone who would leave PSG at 28 to go to a club like that and go to Serie A in particular. It just, to me, sort of strikes me maybe as one that Liverpool's name is being used to either drive the price up or drum up a little bit of interest elsewhere or create a bidding war. A good player, but just, like I say, his age and his profile, maybe not one that Liverpool, if they were forced into the market, would maybe go for, just because I think they would want someone who would play a big part, not just for this season, but the seasons after. And I'm not really sure that Leandro Paredes fits that bill, to be honest.
Yeah, like as you say, Liverpool are seen as not typically the team to make a panic transfer. But we've seen, when we had all the problems at centre-half, we saw Ben Davies and Ozan Kabak coming. And do you think it could be Liverpool could find themselves in a similar situation where, we're running thin right now? I mean, at the weekend we started both Henderson and James Milner, and they both played the considerable amount of the game. So, do you think it could possibly be another situation where we do actually jump in and panic buy someone, or do you think there'll be a little bit more strategy behind the transfer as opposed to just getting who we can?
I think Naby Keita's injury is sort of a big factor in this. Sort of the severity of that will really sort of inform what Liverpool do going forward, because they were incredibly reluctant to bring in centre half during that really bad injury crisis they had a couple of seasons ago. It was only, I think people believed that maybe they only moved at the end of the transfer window because they had irons in different fires and stuff, and they were trying to work out different moves. But it really was a case that they were absolutely fine to continue the rest of the season and finish the rest of the season with Fabinho and Joel Matip as the fit centre halves, even though Fabinho obviously isn't a centre half. They were happy to finish the season in that way, and it was only when Joel Matip got that injury at Tottenham away, was it a foot injury, I believe, that they finally decided that we were going to go into the market. So that shows you just quite how reluctant they were to be seen to be panic buying or to be seen to be doing that sort of thing. And I think they'll probably take a similar approach this time. I think if Naby Keita is a few weeks out or maybe a month or so, I think that Liverpool will say, we still have enough. None of those injuries they've got in that position at the moment are particularly severe. I know Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, quite a bad hamstring injury, but one that you don't expect to rule him out for the season. We'll see what happens with Naby Keita and obviously the other injuries there. Curtis Jones is maybe one that they'll just see how it develops, if that's a sort of stress fracture thing. So I think they believe that they've got enough in terms of the numbers there, and that the injuries aren't going to be too bad, so that very soon they'll have a full complement of sort of 7 or 8 midfielders available to them again pretty soon. And if that's the case and Naby Keita's injury isn't a season ender or anything like that, then I think Liverpool will stick to the guns. I may be wrong. I've been wrong about this stuff before, but I just know how stubborn they are about these things, and how much they want to stick to their idea of how transfers should work, and not bringing in someone who will be no use to them next season, and then all of a sudden is on a contract, or and they would argue as well, even if it's not a permanent transfer, that getting the loan to the right players is even more difficult, because who wants to loan out a player who's actually useful to a club of Liverpool's stature? It's it'd take a lot of money to convince a club to do that. So, my feeling is that they will stick to the guns, particularly if Naby Keita's injury is nothing too severe.
At the start of the season, there was calls from the fans with the likes of Youri Tielemans, who's a 25-year-old. We've been linked to him in the past, coming back onto the radar now. Do you think he's a type of player that we could potentially go for? Not even for a short-term fix, just for like someone that could just fit into the team regardless.
Well, I think Leicester is sort of definitely more open to the idea of selling him now. I think it's getting to the point where they know that if they don't cash in soon, it's going to cause them a bit of a problem. So I think the negotiations on that front would be slightly easier. And he is a talented player. I think we've seen that since he joined Leicester. Really smart signing, and they tend to make those. He's a really good creative midfielder, a goal threat from distance, and he works hard. But I think one thing that maybe sticks out about him to me in terms of would he make it at Liverpool is, I think physically might be an issue in terms of his lack of pace. Now, to be honest, I suppose maybe I'm wrong about that in terms of because James Milner, not exactly lightning quick these days, is he? But, I think if Liverpool were to sign a midfielder, they'd like someone who covers the ground a little bit quicker. I think Tielemans have seen it at times at Leicester, and, maybe Liverpool could think that they could cover for this with the way the system is, but we've seen at times it's quite easy for players to get off the back of him and get into space in front of the defence, and that's been a problem for Liverpool already this season. So Tielemans, even though maybe fits the age profile, he's probably available. Has he got those physical qualities to work in the Jurgen Klopp midfield? Has he got the stamina to press over 90 minutes? From what I've seen him, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Liverpool see it differently, and maybe that is one of the opportunities because, as we say, age profile is probably right and he is available. So it'll be interesting to see. But for me, doesn't quite have the physical qualities. And if you take the risk of signing him and it doesn't quite work out, it'd probably be on quite a big wage. It'd be difficult to offload him next summer when that comes around. So there would be a huge element of risk attached to making that move.
Yeah, and I guess, with the transfer window still being open now, you seem to get Liverpool linked to every player under the sun, don't you? It'd be hard to guess which type of profile player Liverpool are actually after, like with people linking us to everyone. So what type of player do you personally think that Liverpool need? Is it an attacking midfielder? Is it a defending midfielder? Do we need an all-rounder? Or is there any particular player that you can think of that is like a really good fit for Liverpool that you'd really like to see come in and do a job?
I think just judging from what Jurgen Klopp signed in the past is all-rounder sort of fits the bill. I don't think, I think sort of it's unusual at the moment to see him sort of using Harvey Elliott and bringing Fabio Carvalho in, because they're obviously two pure attacking midfielders, and that's not really something we've seen from Liverpool's midfield under Jurgen Klopp. It's sort of an experimental feel. It's something he maybe wants to pivot towards eventually, but generally most of the successes come with more all-rounders. Yes, they can score a goal, but they're strong in the tackle, good at pressing, defensively aware. That has tended to be the sort of midfielder who really prizes. So, I think that will be what they need again. I think, like I said, you've got Carvalho and Elliott. Maybe they're going to be the future of that midfield, but they're quite young at the moment. So I think for now, if you want to keep the standards up, it's someone who can do a bit of everything. And as we said, age is probably a big part of it as well. I was slightly surprised earlier this summer. I asked the source at Liverpool about, what about Yves Bissouma? Was going to Tottenham, looked like the price was really good, or really acceptable, and was available. Wouldn't have asked for too much, I think, in terms of wages. And that one got knocked down to me with the shout that, Bissouma is not someone who comes in and is, can play for Liverpool for X amount of years. He's not at that level of quality. Doesn't massively step things up. In a way that Liverpool want to do. They want this next midfield signing to be a really big one and someone who can play for them for 10 years at the highest level. But I think Bissouma for me, and I think he will prove this at Tottenham in terms of, will be perfect in that system in terms of, under a manager like Conte who prizes his players really working hard and he can play a bit as well. He's got a bit of everything. Is really that all-round midfielder we were talking about. So I'm surprised about that he wasn't one who was seen to fit the bill. But obviously Liverpool have a very clear idea of what they want, and Yves Bissouma didn't quite fit into that.
Yeah, well, thanks anyway, Lynchy. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks for everybody else for jumping in the comments as well. I appreciate your input, giving us little nudges of what to go with on the show. and we will see you again soon.